with everyone present. First thing on the agenda, Chad Wilkins, Iowa Rotocast Plastics, county property in Freeport.
Morning.
Good morning.
Well, you guys had some more questions. So I just, property and solar array. Sure.
Yeah, Chad, I had reached out to you about, that there was if you had considered relocating, if your project would work, if that right of way strip across there was abandoned and that triangular case included, if that configuration would work as you possibly looked at that, would that be an option?
We looked at that as an option and, the contractor's feedback, he didn't think that would be feasible with just how the dry creek runs through there and the setbacks. He didn't think we'd get much for panels in that area. So we did look at that. I don't think we would gain a whole lot with that option. We also did contact Alliant to see if they would be willing to sell that lot next to us too. We have not heard back from them yet.
That whole piece that they're talking about basically is all in the floodplain, if we look at the floodplain maps. And we don't have a prohibition according to Tony for solar panels to be in that space.
Right now, state of plans to cover flood mitigation for the Freeport area.
Yeah, sure. So we did, also, there's maybe some questions on how these panels would sit there. They would be about 2.5 feet off the ground. The posts are pile drived in, 9 foot deep. There is green space in between these panels where there could be a pollinator garden or flowers planted in between the strips. And as far as the grant too, the requirements are, they have to do an environmental site review before we'd qualify for the grants and make sure everything was good on that, so.
What's there is not a pollinator garden now.
Okay.
It's native plantings,
Just, okay.
with very deep roots for flood mitigation.
Okay.
And we collect seeds off of it for the roadsides.
Okay.
Which saves us money from buying that same seed.
But we don't have, we got a contract with the DNR, but if we sell part of it or something, you just gotta pay back the prorated. They don't amount to much, but
Over 20 months.
The validity of the contracts is
In question.
question too.
Can you expand on that?
the signatures that sign the contracts for non-authorized. Andy would have to.
We'll ask Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I see no problem with, we wanted 4 acres or something,
Well, would we have to, at a public hearing?
Yes.
Forbid.
Yeah.
This is land next to the recycling center that is in the county's interest to hold on to. It's not a good idea to sell this land. And that's why the former board said no.
We did just quick, we have a contract to do a layout of kind of how that would, how that would lay in there. Yes.
What you needed there was approximately just a little over 4 acres.
Yes, yep. Close to probably 4.5,
Okay.
roughly, but that's off of Wilkins, just an outcome it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's probably a bunch of procedural questions. We
Yeah.
can talk with Andy, whether it's bids or if there's a way to sell it directly. I think that if there is, it's gonna involve getting it, get value placed on it, either appraised or something and that kind of thing. So, but I guess we first need to decide if there's three of you interested in going forward, you can get Andy involved in it, and if not, then let them know so they can know what their options are.
Yeah,
We were looking at, well, second option was putting the array in there and building an old stage road there and running a line between the two plants and a line. Won't allow that, so that's not enough.
Well, I would not be in favor of moving forward on this discussion. The previous board voted against this for flood reasons for the Freeport neighborhood and for county to own this valuable land in Freeport. We don't know what the future holds.
yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward and looking at it further. I think that Rotocast has been a good community partner, and if we can accommodate them, I think that's in the community's best interest as well. So I'm in favor of moving forward and looking further.
Did the rooftop wouldn't work?
Not with the building we have. Yeah, we explored that too.
The amount of panels was just too heavy for the structure that we have there.
Well, I don't see where we're causing any issues with the fourth line. When everything is elevated above the ground, 2 feet. I guess I would go forward with it if it was just that roughly 5 acres.
4.5, yeah. Still, it's 5 acres behind there for.
Yeah, and if it did come to that point, I'd sooner see it go as one parcel so we don't have that little remnant piece up there so that it's at least,
All that.
yeah.
Oh, the triangle above it or whatever.
So if usable or not, I think should remain with the other if it goes forward in that direction.
You're talking about this.
Yeah, but no, a little tiny triangle goes up to a triangle point up by the road.
Yeah,
Down towards the bottom of that, actually past the bottom of that map, Mark.
Yeah. I guess I would.
Given we're in a contract with the DNR, it's floodplain, it's remediation for the water. That's property that we have. There's only a few feet of it in this question.
Well, that bottom piece is not in the floodplain. This piece of the limit is floodplain, but it's drainage. It's not in flooding up there. It's water coming through. So I brought that up with Tony, asking whether or not we could, that those kinds of structures can be located in there. And if you're putting driving steel posts in the ground and so forth, it shouldn't be any mitigation because there's no serious erosion down through that channel.
No.
I'd like to have a little bit more community input from neighbors in Freeport.
Well, that's the process.
Exactly.
Sort of public hearing coming this way.
Yeah, I'd be for taking a look at it.
Find out the rest of the facts.
I guess you better, Dan's want to look into it. So procedures would be and have them start drawing out the paperwork and so on.
When would the environmental study be done?
that would be done. I think it's after the grant application and then the approval of, if you were able to move forward with purchase, so.
Yeah, so probably the process is we have to own land, fill out the grant application, send it in for them to approve, and then they review it, and then goes from there.
Okay.
The process would actually start with us meeting with the DNR and looking that issue up first. So it'll be a little bit longer process that we're looking at here.
Sure.
That's what we engage Andy for.
All right. Does anyone else have anything for these guys?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Consent agenda?
Got the minutes and auditor's quarterly report.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? None? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Any committee reports?
The Turkey Valley watershed. It'll be $25 million over the next 5 years for an 8 to 10 county area of the northeast Iowa for flood mitigation. So they got all the particulars on it yet, but as they know, they'll give us more information on it.
How many counties? 5?
8 to 10,
10.
and it's 25 million over 5 years. So it, I mean, you start dividing it up, it gets smaller as the time goes on, but they ain't got all the particulars on it yet. They'll let us know when they get more information.
Would the Bear Creek shed be in that one or?
That they didn't have all
I
the
don't think it goes that far.
particulars. Now, Turkey River, this here's the Turkey River watershed, but it's an 8 to 10 county area, so I don't know if it's just Turkey River shed or if it's other sheds too that can,
What's the
I knew-
source of the 25 million?
but
Who's the source of the 25 million?
I don't know, it's the federal, it's government grant money, it's $25 million. Yeah, the canoe could use. I think we place to put some.
It's probably. The Turkey River formed with some grant money, or watershed formed with some grant money 10 years ago. Then the grant money, all got used up for their planning. So then the county started putting in, what was it, like $500 per city or.
250 or 500.
Yeah, first put in little money just so that they could maintain their status as a group, so that if money ever came along, they would be ready to apply for it. So that's what we're kind of, it's $250 per city and county.
Yeah,
And the county's been paying for Spillville,
everybody,
Yeah.
everybody pretty much ain't it.
that are in that watershed. But you've been maintaining helping maintain that group so that if money came along, it would be able to be applied for.
Spillville's doing a study, their well water or something was having a problem. Did you hear anything about that, Steve? They're doing.
Well, that's gonna move forward. We've got a grant in loan for a water extension and new above ground storage and pumping because we don't have enough. The emergency that we had on Friday night really showed because we only have, still has 11,000 gallons of water storage in the 100-plus-year-old tank. And our pressure is not enough. They had to bring in additional pumping. They had to bring in the tankers and set up a pump on the Turkey River. And I don't know that they really pumped anything because it's sandbars.
Yeah.
And they had, so when the big hook ladder truck came from Decorah, that thing will consume 1,100 gallons a minute if they have to have it. And the fire hydrants will only handle 500 gallons. So
Those numbers don't work out.
no, things don't look good. So we're trying to see that good chance that will go out to bid the first of the year for installation in 24, because it's desperately needed.
They help everybody put in new septic systems too in that area too, Spillville area.
Out in the rural area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up to, I think, $5,000 per household, I think is what it was.
That's all part of that watershed.
Water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like the Yellow River watershed. They've
Yeah.
done a lot of that same stuff.
I don't know what a new sewer system costs, ain't cheap, but
And they're working on another one to identify sources of, nitrogen and so forth that are going into the aquifers that can be affecting. So they're doing some more studies on that, and then also looking for uncapped wells within the city, old uncapped wells to be able to seal those off and get rid of any contamination that come from those.
But their wells are, city wells are fine.
And city wells are fine. That's not the problem. The problem is the storage capacity and reserve. And that's a big deal. If you have,
Pumping with that truck, they have 10 minutes.
well, we need to
That'd be
be
great.
Chances are with that amount of suction draw by that machine, it could collapse piping. And that's really tragic.
Any other committee reports?
County Social Services met over in Weston. And, nothing really much, I guess, other than they are gonna do an internal audit of pay equivalencies and stuff. We looked at some outside firms, but given the tentative nature of what might be happening and moving forward by wait a year. So internally evaluate some of the positions. For that. They have 22 or 24 employees, so. Yeah, right in between. That bid for one firm, it was $250,000 to do this study. That was a little much. Range from 4,000 to 250,000. Interesting.
From what range?
4,000 to 250,000.
wow.
Four bids. Gondry was 10,000.
Definitely interesting. Well, it is 9:50. Next on the agenda, discuss library funding.
Okay, so I put this on here. I apologize to Kristen. I didn't mean to get you excited. I just know that one of the other counties was asking how counties do library funding. And so that reminded me that last year at budget time, you said, well, we'll talk with the library before the next budget cycle and figure out if there's something we want to change. And here we are 9 months later and we haven't talked to the libraries yet. So I figured it'd be a good idea for you as a board to decide if that's something you do want to pursue, how you're going to pursue it. If you want to just leave the funding contract in place that you currently have, then you just decide that now. We don't have to do anything more. But if you do want to look at it, see if it needs updated, that kind of thing, I think you need to just ask the library group association to get together, and whether it's with full board or one or two of you or me or whatever, we need to know what procedure to follow.
Is that was decided amongst the libraries themselves? About the
Yes,
proportions
yes.
that each would.
So you get to decide how much money you're giving. So obviously that's your decision, but it takes the whole, all 6 or 5 libraries and representatives for the county to sign an agreement to say how they're going to split it up. So what the agreement that's in place has a formula very similar to the one before that. Lorraine worked, and I was on that committee, and when she was the library director, did this agreement, which wasn't much different than the one that was even before that. So, but all the libraries have to kind of decide how they're going to split it up. I think one drawback of the current agreement is that the amount that gets given, that's assigned to each library before it's split up based on a formula, is a flat amount. And so as valuations go up, that part doesn't change. So any increase in valuation, which generates more revenue for libraries, all gets divided up by the formula. So there may be something you want to do to break that down a little bit. I would think that you could like the flat rate amount that each library gets could be somehow tied to the valuation increase so that they all get a portion of the value increase before you split it up by the usage formula. And even that usage formula could be, and Kristen could answer this, but I think all the libraries do studies of who's checking out books and if they're from rural areas versus city areas and that kind of thing. So they could look at that formula again. It might very well be the same percentages as it is now or not, but that would be something they would really have to provide that information. But that would be something for this committee of supervisors and library directors to look into. So I guess I put this on here to know if you want to go back to look at the agreement again or not, and if you do, how you want to do that. Because I don't think it's appropriate to wait till the budget request's in and then you have 1 week left before you need to have your budget proposal ready and you don't have time to get everyone together to look at the funding mechanism again.
How often do all the libraries sit down together and have a discussion, or is it just the last time that the agreement was put together?
We meet at least annually, and we all do reporting to the state annually as well that reflects what our service areas are and how that population is distributed among people who are borrowing materials from each of our libraries.
So during those discussions, are you talking about the agreement or the funding or?
Historically not. We certainly have had that to part of our conversation, but generally when we get together, we're talking about, ways that we can collaborate, share resources, help each other succeed in challenging times, what's working well in our communities, needs that we're seeing, those types of things.
When is your next meeting?
We generally meet in October or November prior to our funding request to this group. But again, we could call a meeting at any time.
Might be plenty of time, but then I guess.
So just a reminder, the money you fund is all rural fund money because you're helping support the libraries with tax money from rural residents because the people who live in town are already having funding from their city dollars go towards the libraries. So what you're funding is to help cover the operations costs of libraries so that rural residents can use them as well as the city residents. So that's why you have a stake in this, but how that's split up should be agreed by all 5 libraries as well as you. But I threw out the idea that rather than having that, so you currently have 18 cents per 1,000 funding libraries, and then they have a formula in the agreement where there's a dollar amount that each library gets, and then you divide the rest up by a formula. Maybe you would rather have it be something like, of that 18 cents, each library gets 1 cent, and then you split up the other 13 cents by the formula. That way, when the valuation goes up, every library's fixed amount goes up too. And then the rest would get split up by the formula. Something like that would help the formula adjust as times go on. Because I wouldn't be surprised if valuations are up, 40 or 50% of what they were in 2009 or 10 or whatever this was last addressed. So that means all additional growth is going into the formula and not in the flat rate amount.
I'd be willing to serve as the supervisor rep on a committee if we do that route. And meet
It's
with
probably easier
directors
if
of
1
each
or 2
library.
supervisors just meet with the library association and then bring something that everyone in the committee agrees on to the full board for action rather than trying to hammer out those details in the board meeting. But that would be the other option, is to have the whole thing in a board meeting.
And that your meeting is coming up in October?
We haven't set the date yet, but we can certainly put it in October.
I think that'd be.
Be a good
Look
idea.
at, nothing has to.
And I
change,
can go into that too. That's no problem.
So you and Shirley would be the reps then, that,
That's okay with everybody?
Yeah.
That's good.
Fine.
All right, will you just keep us updated when that meeting will be?
And I'll coordinate with you, Chris, and we'll get something lined up, and you want me to go to,
Yes.
okay. Then three of us will meet with, library directors, that's fine.
Just go then.
Yeah, not an election time.
1 week before.
Yeah.
Yes.
It sounds like you've been looking, or people have been looking at the usage of the.
Yeah, we had more conversation about that this last week about doing the, making more space for IT.
Yeah.
In fact, are you free to get on talk with?
I got something going on right after, yeah, maybe
You want me to-
later. Yeah.
I think basically my understanding is that northeast corner room, which is currently supposedly housing the Pioneer Cemetery Commission, but they don't use it very much at all. So that room might be available for a staff person.
Probably that one and the one next to it.
The one next to it, the Winneshiek County Historic Preservation Commission currently uses, and they actually are using it on a much more regular basis than the Cemetery Commission. And actually, the corner one is the nicer office because it has more windows. So if we're gonna put a staff person over there,
Yeah, corner.
it's probably the better one.
Yeah. I think, I talked with Steve Johnson at Historic, and as long as there's a place where they can store their books and have it, that computer set up,
Yeah, they weren't too.
they have no problem with that. Other than they would like some help to move the books because most of them are all social security age people.
Yeah,
Because he did say, I talked to him, and that's why I came up. They'd be fine if a little corner in the Smith building too. If that
Yeah,
was.
if there's a space. John, I asked John about
Three
that
empty offices down there,
on the basement level.
down Smith Building,
Yeah. So I mean, and they've got they have an inventory of their 5 different publications that they provide for the chamber and for bookstores and libraries around and so forth. So it's a good thing that they have the storage.
Would that take a lot of updating or changing facility wise over there?
No,
for IT?
no, it's very minor. Looking at what it would take for IT in there is simply there's a conduit between this room right here and the old jail building. Electrically, it looks like it's fine. John's gonna double check that to make sure it doesn't appear, because they've done updates recently within the last few years over the main panel in the basement. And it's really a very sound building.
That's great.
And to have it just sit there unused when we've got space constraints seems like a big use of county property.
the other thing that was brought up is the upstairs jail, which is, part of it is being used for storage by the clerk of court, but most of the upstairs leads to the Historical Society, the nonprofit group, not the government group. And they just have things stored up there. So there may be some things that could be moved around, or if they have room at their house up here on Broadway, because I know that Dan Marks is looking for some storage area too. So I think there's more questions and more investigation to make before we make it.
Yeah, there is, Dan, for archiving, he's getting more and more pressure on archiving evidence from any of these crimes that have to be kept for a much longer period of time, stuff that he doesn't access, but it has to be secure. And so what do we have around the county other than a brand new building made for that purpose and the old jail itself?
Can we put the IT Monday and continue with today? Would that be okay?
I don't know if we need to until we get better Understand
we get a little better here.
Understanding that, so we can put a worker even, yeah.
Yeah, the upstairs part of it is down the road, you know, because that's
Yeah.
what's in the storage up there for the Historic Society is, looks like they've gone a long time without going through his inventory, some things that may not be left.
We better get a line here. Next on the agenda, Dave Kratz, discuss planning and zoning policies and procedures. Have a chair.
Well, unfortunately, a little bit in my own mind, really while I'm here, but then I wouldn't want to disappoint somebody. Here's the issue. A year ago, I approached Jenna, about the possibility of doing a subdivision on my property out there, 30+ acres. And she informed me and another fellow that was with me that they absolutely wanted no growth. And so that, yes, I could have a subdivision, but would I ever be able to do anything with it? The P and Z board just simply wanted everything to remain agriculture. Okay. Fast forward, yes, I did get a subdivision established, so forth, so on. Took it to the P and Z at the Decorah City, and they unanimously passed it. City council voted it down. I've had a relationship with a 60-member legal firm in Des Moines for 30-40 years. I've had them look into different issues for me over the years, and they looked into this one a little bit. And frankly, the way they voted that down at the city council ended up never being codified. Therefore, with the lack of that, it was deemed to be an approval. Now, that's an issue that could go to court. I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not litigious. I really don't want to waste my time and money over an issue like that, so I just kind of dropped it. I went to the county P and Z, and we'll just say that the issue here is that it has to be exactly what the P and Z or what the city of Decorah requires in the city of Decorah. Well, obviously that doesn't work too good in the county when that out there. I'm not trying to develop 60 lots or 40 lots, or for that matter, even probably more than 10, 12 lots over a period of 10 years here. So anyway, financially, it doesn't make sense. And I had talked to a couple of you people there about this a little bit, going forward, they also made the comment that there will be no more variances. In other words, it has to be what the city code is, or it cannot be approved. But I feel sorry for the next guy that might want to actually do something too. I have for you is, I don't know what your stance is on development. I assume that you want more taxpayers, you want more tax base, so forth and so on, because the cost of operation continues to go up. That would be normal business for any organization, is to figure out how they're going to accomplish, and maintain their capabilities financially. So I don't know. I'm guessing that you probably would. I don't know how to proceed with you. I'll just be honest. I don't know if obviously if it doesn't make financial sense to do it as the city requirements are, then I really don't have the need to have a subdivision. And talking to my attorney, he said, you guys could eliminate the subdivision. You have the authority to do that on this. And so then I would go back to regular route. I've been told that I'd have to go back to the P and Z to eliminate the subdivision. Well, if they said, no, you got to have the subdivision, but you can't use it unless you meet the city requirements, which don't match the county requirements. The county rules are different than the city. I'm stuck in never land. And I don't really want to do that. I really don't want to do that. We don't have to do it. It isn't like I'm going to make a lot of money. The fact is, I'm not so sure I'm going to make any money when it gets all done here. But I had some friends, I had some people, three businessmen approached me about selling them lots that own businesses here but don't live here. They want to be here with their employees. Okay, I mean, and they're gonna build nice places, be good neighbors, so forth and so on. So, and some other people. So I'll throw the question. What would you recommend I do?
My question is, Dave, is I need to have Tony speak to this, Tony Phillips. That is, when it's in a 2 mile of the city limits of Decorah, there's a sphere of influence. Tony, so everyone is on the same page.
All right. Morning, I'm Tony Phillips. So Iowa Code 354.9, review of plats within 2 miles of a city. So paragraph 2 states, if a subdivision lies in a county which has adopted ordinances regulating the division of land and also lies within the area of review established by a city pursuant to this section, then a subdivision plat or plat of survey for the division or subdivision shall be submitted to both the city and the county for approval. The standards and conditions applied by a city or the county for review and approval of this subdivision show the same standards and conditions used for the review and approval of subdivisions within the city limits. So according to Iowa Code 354.9, paragraph 2, if somebody wants to create a subdivision within 2 miles of a city that has claimed the 2 mile privilege, we must use the city's subdivision rules. We are not using the county's rules, we're using the city's rules. Does that answer your question, Steve?
And I'm assuming that the city of Decorah, this mayor has adopted the 2 mile influence zone in the past. So we're to follow 354, 359.2.
354.9.
354.9.
Paragraph 2.
Well,
You have the right numbers. It's not
we're in the right spot anyway. And Tony is the one, he's our go-to. So your map meets the city's zoning requirements?
No,
No, it doesn't.
we're not gonna put in, they want to put in sidewalks. Well, I got the most expensive sidewalk in the county in my back that borders me. So, I mean,
You might want to explain that. Some people would not understand what you mean,
okay,
Mr. Kratz.
I ordered the bike trail and the walking trail there. And it's well used and so forth and so on. The issue there is you got a lot of people walking in your backyard, quote unquote, although the way we set up our lots, we're probably a good 100 yards. The homes would be from there to maintain privacy. So it's on. Which creates the issue of why would I put in sidewalks in front of the house? There's no place to walk to. I mean, where are you walking? You got the sidewalk in the back, you can walk anywhere for 12 miles, I guess, you know, there is. I don't know. And then one of the council members of the city said, well, that helps snow plowing. I hadn't figured that one out yet, but okay. Anyway, that's the issue there. I could put them in. Yeah, I could put them in at some point in time. And I think there was some other things. I offered to actually dig a big well and turn it over to the city. So if they ever want to annex that and or Mineral Heights up there, been short of water pressure for years. I used to live up there and I know that I paid a premium on my insurance because of that. And I offered to do that and I said, I will let the city run it, manage it, and I'll give it to you in 25 years. Just pay me a small fee for the use of the water or whatever. They decided they didn't want to do that. Appreciate that, I understand that. So it wasn't like I wasn't trying to work with the city, so it's on. But there's some things there relative to road, you know, we're only talking maybe a half a dozen, no, I don't even think we're talking a half a dozen homes up there. I'm reserving 4 lots to the north of me that I do not care to sell. Now, the next guy that owns the property, he might decide he wants to do it. I just want to maintain my, privacy there. Where I sit on 14 acres right there, and then there's about 15 acres to the north of me that could be developed if I wanted to. Guys, at this point in time, it really doesn't make any difference to me. The only thing is I don't want to get stuck with a subdivision that I can't use. And so if I'm not gonna use it, then revert it back to, I'd like your support to revert it back to agricultural land. Because that's what I was told by Jen and Sizer, that's what they want.
Is there a recorded subdivision map on the property?
Is it recorded? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, yeah. No,
So according to the city layout, there's a map recorded
right.
according to the city layout.
Right. The city, in fact, as the county engineer approved this plat, I already have, what do you call it, zip, GPS codes assigned to each lot out there. So I went through everything that I had, spent some time with your city engineer, your county engineer at the time, and we went through a bunch of stuff, prepared it properly according to him. Oh, and he approved the whole setup. He said that's pretty much what I would approve. I had put in a cul-de-sac road so that if they ever had to plow snow there, which I was not asking anybody to maintain anything, we'll do that ourselves. But if they ever had to, they'd have a way of turning the trucks. Need that issue. Some of the property, it was amazing to me, though, I have 2 lots that are actually north and west, or west of the bike tree. Or the most sought after lots. It kind of surprised me. But, well, I mean, it's way up in the corner up there. So there is a demand. Anyway, like I said, I'm stopped. I don't know where we go.
So, I think the way those were laid out, some of those lots, bike trail went through them, not adjacent to them.
Like I said, there was 2 lots up in the northwest corner.
That's if the bike trail goes through, not,
Right, and there's access,
yes.
you know, so where it's on. So,
And you said how many houses you wanted to potentially put up?
for me, on the near term here, and like say the near term, in the next 5 to 10 years, I was hoping that we would have probably 5 to 6 homes. That was it, all to the north.
Yeah, but then you earlier said like 12 to,
There couldn't be that many lots. Could be that many lots. It only requires 1 acre lots, which is great. I like that. That gives everybody a lot of room.
and is there, like, if it went back to agriculture, you could sell off lots, some space for people to build otherwise, is that the deal, or why do you want to do what?
No, I don't think that would be a law.
No.
No. You know, if I sold my own home and wanted, but the 14 acres along to keep the rest of it, yeah, I can divide that way, but that would be the only way you can do it. So,
I guess, I mean, personally, I could say, well, I can understand the city or the state's point. I grew up on the edge of Decorah and we did not want to be annexed. I remember back as a child and we got annexed and then, well, with other additional in the north, well, we don't need sidewalks. Now they're in the city. And we have this whole debacle in the city about sidewalks, and some developer said, well, I'll put them in when I sell enough lots, but they never went in and now it's back. So I understand where gets tangled in that, and that
we asked the city.
the cul-de-sacs aren't big enough to turn around, but, you know. Equipment.
Because I asked the city engineer, and Kay did, and the city administrator at the time, and if they would ultimately want to annex it. And the response from Sure was unanimously no.
Correct.
Yeah, which I mean, would have changed the way we would have probably looked at those things on that. But, I don't know. The idea of having the 1 acre lots, I gotta tell you, it appeals to a number of people. Yeah. So, there actually was a feedlot on the property next to the bike trail for a number of years. And I even had it for a couple of years until I decided that, maybe it was time to move it on. Nobody complained about it, but why wait for that? Anyway,
What was the city's reasoning, Lorraine, for the turn down of the proposal? You have some idea of that?
There were several items that, just as he stated, sidewalks. Also, there were some water and sewer challenges that were ever annexed. And so when they sat and discussed it, the majority of their comments had to do with the fact that if at some point it would be annexed, it would have to be to the criteria. They were aware that that was not the case, because they said they wanted to annex it. But they still felt that there were components of it, stormwater management, and it was still within, it's in 2 mile radius, but they felt that they should go by the criteria of what they would set up as far as the city was concerned. I would say that discussions we have not been unanimously. I think the last thing was 4-3 as far as the voting was concerned. So they spent a considerable amount of time discussing it. There was brought up the fact that also with it close, even though it's in the county, as well as I do, the county doesn't stop and nobody comes in and buys. Everybody, is a way of generating income for both county and city. But in the end, they really felt that they wanted the guidelines to go according to what the city guidelines are.
It sounds like Iowa code agrees with that. Iowa code,
Yeah.
254.9 paragraph 2, sounds like it agrees with that.
Well, it agrees with the fact, according to what he stated. I mean, for the city, it was just an opinion. But according to the code, your PNC goes by the city, with the city's statement.
I had done a water management program. I had to do that to build a home up there. And it wasn't from the county, it wasn't from the city. This is from the DNR itself. They worked with the DNR. And they approved what I'd done, the changes I made there. So the city asked me for it, but if they go to the DNR, they'll see that I complied with that. Fortunately, that gal was head of the DNR, a line gal. She and I talked about some things about that property, where the water goes, because it does impact the property. And they were okay with it. Anyway, that's where I'm at.
So it's your request to.
If I'd like to have a subdivision, then I'd like to have my land back as a non-subdivision.
What would it take to do that, Tony?
Iowa code lays out a procedure to vacate a plat. So Mr. Kratz's attorney would have to follow the steps in Iowa code to vacate the plat.
And then it's automatically revert to the previous classification.
You would, oh, what are we talking about?
Well, to get.
So to clear up, the subdivision that Mr. Kratz is dealing with right now does not exist. Okay? Does not exist.
God, that's good news.
Correct.
I wish there was taxing people that.
He is trying to establish this subdivision within a different subdivision, which is called Trails View subdivision, which was created by the previous landowner, Mr. Holthouse. Okay? So if Mr. Kratz wants to vacate a plat, the plat that he would be vacating is the subdivision plat of Trails View subdivision created by Mr. Holthouse prior to him. None of this changes zoning districts. This is currently zoned A1, except for a portion up in the northern part that is zoned something residential. Forgive me. I could look it up and tell you, but I don't have it off the top of my head right now. So where Dave's house is, Mr. Kratz's house is A1 agricultural. The majority of the subdivision is zoned A1 agricultural. The only subdivision plat that is in play right now that exists is the subdivision of Trails View subdivision.
Got some clear.
That's something that they didn't tell me at the court. I went over there many times.
Well, it was worth your 20 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm out of here, guys.
All right.
I have one issue I'd like to regarding this.
Sure.
Board, so in the meeting, the P and Z board stated that that you have to meet everything to the letter of the code. Well, there's been plenty of subdivisions in the past that have not met everyone. And I guess I'm asking the board for clarification, so going forward, does basically everybody, no matter what, have to meet this? Because that's why they said they would not approve our plan, is because there's discrepancies from the code. Which I've been part of a lot of subdivision processes, both in the county and in the city, and rarely ever do you get them to hit all of the code. So I guess we were turned down because we didn't meet them all. So the next step, so I'm assuming that any other subdivision coming forward must be everything per code. Because it hasn't been the way in the past. So is this a new policy? And if so, would be put out to the public or made a statement made somewhere so people know our guidance going forward?
For these subdivisions within 2 miles of the city,
Some of them, yes.
can you give
Oh, Freeport,
examples?
Woodland Acres, some of them out there. I did one personally, and I know mine did hit everything to the code.
What year was that?
2015-ish?
I can't speak to it, I wasn't here.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying, it's happened in the past, and all of a sudden they're saying, no, we're not doing that. That's why I'm just asking for clarification, because you've allowed before, and all of a sudden they're not. Because had we known that going into it, we probably wouldn't have wasted the money doing it. And I'm trying to save other people from wasting their time and money. If the county wants zero growth, or it has to be in this very rigid structure, especially in the 2 mile district, because you're trying to implement city code in county areas, it just doesn't work.
I think you're asking us to comment on something we have no facts in front of us on. We're dealing with this issue today, and the fact is Iowa Code 254.9, paragraph 2. Without the other facts on these others, we can't comment on that based speculation.
I'm not asking you, no, I'm just saying, hey, set guidance going forward, because it's changed from what's happened in the past.
It's definitely something we should look into.
Well, I have a question. Is the county board of supervisors in favor of growth or no growth?
Growth. I am.
Growth. I'm in favor of growth.
Growth all day long.
Growth?
Community input growth
Because we don't-
according to our ordinance and our comprehensive plan. That's why we have a P and Z commission and a comprehensive plan and community input.
Well, the reason I asked the question, I was going to told point back. We are not going to have any more growth. It's going to be all.
I mean, we're at houses now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you heard that, we're at the
There's
last.
that about a year ago when I was starting this whole part of this project was Jenny Alvesizer, met with her and another guy with me in her office. She was very emphatic. And she said, and I asked her, I said, would you repeat that? Because I don't want to misunderstand something here. She repeated it. We want zero growth. Everything should remain at.
Help me, who is Jan?
Shot the attorney.
Janet is my assistant.
Oh, okay.
I will discuss that with her, but I think that is not the position that our office is involved in because our office doesn't set policy. Our office enforces the zoning ordinance as drafted, as it exists. We advise P and Z as to what rules and regulations require, but I don't see this as I will discuss with her.
All right. I guess I've been to several meetings and it's, what's the quality of the land that would be taken out of production? It's a criteria that you look at. So it's not like, I don't think they would not make exceptions. It's in relationship to other factors, but.
I guess ultimately it's not up to us at this point.
Sorry, I used up your time, gentlemen.
That's okay.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Yep, next day.
Yep.
Andy Vandermont, legal questions regarding agenda and other issues. Thank you, Tony.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
We want everyone to be able to face the process, so they're gonna have you to turn around that.
Okay. What do you have?
Oh, some of the DNR, contracts we have. The legality. And one, the roadside manager signed it. Is that,
Which DNR contracts are you talking about?
for the,
Or the land in Freeport land out there.
by Rotocast?
Who were you guys talking to when you had questions about this then? If it wasn't to the county attorney?
I just went through the papers and looked at the signatures.
Yeah.
You have a very complicated issue. And part of the complication is you receive the funding under the grant, you utilize the funding under the grant. The issue of authority, I think is complicated by the fact that whether there was or wasn't, I'm not saying there wasn't, is whether or not it's been ratified by accepting the benefits of the agreement. You follow me?
Yeah.
I mean, in law of agency, you can give an agent specific authority. And in this particular instance, Lee may have done that. I don't know. But the more difficult part of it is the fact, in my mind, that you received the benefit, you carried through with your end of the contract, as did DNR. And now if you say we're not going to honor it, I think it's a difficult one to say he didn't have authority. You know, despite everything we did to demonstrate to the contrary that he had authority, we're not going to honor the contract at this point. And again, this is going without knowing what went on between Lee and, within his office, because if Lee delegated that authority to him to sign it, he has actual authority. If he had, if Lee approved the contract and it was signed off, he had implicit authority. If it was simply ratified after the fact, he may not have had any authority at all. But again, you've accepted the benefit and you've carried out your side of the agreement, at least to the point that you attempt to rescind it. I don't know if I can give you a better answer to that based on the facts that we have.
That's good. I have another kind of just a spin off. Do we have any issue? Do we need to have a resolution that authorizes, let's use, Mike Shimmick as an example. He'll sign off on easement documents and things like that. Do we as a board have any liability if we haven't put something down in writing that gives authority for different people to make those types of decisions?
I'm not. Let me back up a little bit. So you did do, and this may have been, maybe Dan and Shirley were on, but several years ago, you gave the engineer authority to sign contracts, for example. Mike, as a licensed surveyor, his signing documents is a little bit different than some other people because he's the only one with the authority to sign, plats and surveys and stuff that he does. I'm not sure that, I guess using him as an example, I don't think that there's a liability issue. Going back to the original question about the DNR contracts, there, and again, I don't know if these came before the board, that these, I'm not sure what the engineer's office did in terms of notification or preparation or approval or anything like that from the board back then. But, you know, there it seems to me that if this is an entity under your purview, at least to the extent that you are, that they are seeking grant money that impacts the budget that exists for them, you guys have a role in that because it's obviously grant income is a positive benefit, but it's still an impact on the budget. So I think being aware of what's being applied for and that type of thing in this circumstance would have been appropriate. I don't know if I'm getting to your specific question.
A better example might be if the IT department wants to sign a lease on some computers. I usually advise them to bring it and have the board act on that lease because then it's the county's official authorities entering the lease agreement. Whereas they could probably pass some or acknowledge and give him the John Lukey, the ability to sign that contract, but the difference is he shouldn't just sign it, not tell the board and assume that we are now bound to a lease agreement for 5 years.
Yeah, another example is 2080 agreements. Anytime we do a 2080, it comes through the Board of Supervisors. You know, it may be negotiated before he gets here, but it needs final approval here. But no, I think Ben's is a very good example.
Yeah, I just want, my question from Mike's perspective is just making sure he had mentioned something about that in the past. You know, is there a problem? I didn't think there was because he is the surveyor. Just, I want to make sure that we don't leave him hanging.
Yeah.
In some way.
I think Mike is well aware that if he does something that is questionable, I mean, if it's from a legal standpoint, if he runs it past me, if it's from a policy standpoint, he runs it past you. Or Nick at this point, but I think within his normal responsibilities for, you know, creating a plat to vacate a road or creating stuff for, you know, whatever, he can do that without exposing the county to liability. And of course, he needs to be selective about how he approaches some of those things.
Yeah, the reason for my question is if we do sell that land out by Rotocast, whether we're bound by law to actually pay back the grant money that we received. So that's what I was bringing.
Right in there, prorate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be advisable to talk to DNR prior to the sale, so you know where you're at with them. I mean, depending on Rotocast's use of the property, you know, is it going to change what their view is on repayment? I don't know.
Then that brings up the next question, is the board needs to know what the procedures are if they decide to pursue the sale of the property. Many of our properties, when the board has sold properties, they just opened it to sealed bids and the high bidder, where this one, they have a specific person or specific company that wants to buy it. Is there a procedure they can use? It seems to me that we did one of these before and they had to determine a fair market value because they couldn't choose to sell it for less than the fair market value and that kind of thing. So
right. So I think you can do either one. If you want to set it out for bids, you can do that. If you want to accept the offer subject to an appraisal or at least a comparable sale analysis to make sure you're getting a fair market value for it, you can do that. Both of them require a public hearing, and you know, you have the opportunity for the public to weigh in on whether or not this is in the interest of the community to do it. So
they could make an offer, this board could preliminary accept it pending public hearing and some sort of study to make sure it meets fair market value.
I would suggest that they get the study to submit with the offer.
Okay.
To establish that the value is at or in excess of fair market value. I don't think this board can act at all to accept it other than to say, we will schedule a public hearing or consider the offer. And meantime, I think you would probably want to talk to DNR about the potential sale. And that may be a point of negotiation. At the hearing of, I don't know how immediate the plans are for Rotocast to utilize that, or if this is even an assignable interest for DNR. I guess I'm not familiar with the grant that we're talking.
There were also some private donations for that seed plot in Freeport. And I want to look into that as well before we move ahead with anything.
I know the seed plot by the fire training center was privately funded. I'm not aware of.
I think part of this was, and I think there might be some U.S. Fish and Wildlife interest in it as well. So I want to just make sure all I's are dotted, all T's are crossed before we move forward with anything.
Sound nice.
Yeah, I think there's at least 3 board members that want to pursue looking into the next steps. So who will be in charge of contacting DNR or Fish and Wildlife or whoever's involved? And then obviously you're gonna have to help them write up public hearing documents, and then we need someone who's gonna coordinate getting an appraisal or a fair market value determination, and so.
I think the appraisal should come from, or should come with the offer.
Okay.
I don't think that that's an expense that the county should incur.
So could you write the public hearing and offer documents to cover that?
I think someone who has been in contact with Rotocast needs to advise them that we need a written proposal, we need an appraisal.
Okay. And I identify that if the board wants that. They've been, most of their communication have been in the board meeting, so they were here presenting a second time today, so that's why the board is coming up to you with it.
But we'd have to decide first if we're gonna just open it to them or have sealed bids to the public. Because that would be a different.
That would be a different procedure, yeah.
So that, we'd need to establish that before we said we want to submit.
I would say we take the first route because we have a potential buyer for that land.
But it's also, somebody else could have walked up and said, well, I'd like to buy that land and put it in.
Put it up for bids, can we reject any and all bids or?
I mean, I think in fairness to the public, it probably should be open.
And most of the sales of property you've done have always been bids, because you don't know who else might be interested in those bids, the initial point.
Bids would have to be contingent upon them having a DNR assessment or survey done.
Well, I think that falls on us.
I think if you open it to bids, the market analysis, the appraisal should be done by the county. I mean, this is a little different than vacating, 60 feet of right of way or something. I mean, you've got a lot in an industrial development park that, you probably need to know what the value is when you're.
This land was originally acquired by the county as part of the establishment of the industrial development, right?
Right.
I think this is the taxpayer owned land, and I think that we are rushing a process that we haven't thought thoroughly through. And I really am advocating to not look into selling this at this time. I know I'm in the minority on that. I don't think it's in the taxpayer's best interest on this one.
I guess I would agree with Sterling that we don't have to sell the land. It's a long-term investment or asset for us. It could be used as a trade for other land that we need for some other purpose that attaches to what we want to do as a county. So I guess I would be not in a rush to do it, but if we do, I think we definitely need to meet the DNR first and foremost before anything to find out what.
We do have to meet with the DNR, and maybe that should be the first step. And
Do that first and then go from there.
I can call them.
I can give it a call. I'll call and see what they're.
you want to see if they can get on the agenda for next Monday or?
The DNR on the agenda?
All we gotta do is call them and ask them.
What are you,
Just be simple.
Well, I think it would be nice if we could all ask them questions.
what are you going to ask them?
How the contract reads, what we have to do if we sell the land, what are the stipulations? We gotta pay back X many dollars of the seed, or if we even can,
Build on
if we even can do anything on it.
I just think it'd be great to have somebody come and talk to all of us
And the public?
and the public.
And that does sound like a good idea, other than it might be hard to get someone to come here and talk to you about it. That's. Because our personnel is probably gonna wanna talk to their legal counsel, and to get someone here to represent legally the interest might take you weeks or.
Maybe we could start by having them, the initial inquiry by Zoom at the meeting next Monday and give them the information we're looking for. They can get back to us.
Well, I would think if Mark contacts them, they can look into it, they can do their research, figure out what it is, what the contract is, get back to us.
It's either yes or no, or
It's a contract.
will or won't. I mean,
Well, and that's not
just
just,
cut and dry.
not just about,
Through the contract?
Yeah.
So it's clear in there, the stipulations, parameters around the contract. So we all know, those of us around the table who have read the contract, that yeah, you can get out of it. They can also get out of it. That's in the contract.
Yeah,
You should have to pay back the investment in that land.
Prorate it back.
My question to the community and to my fellow supervisors is that in the best interest in the long term for the taxpayers of this county? And I'm advocating, no, it's not. On this piece of land, it is not in the best interest of the taxpayers or the neighbors in Freeport. I don't think it's in
That's
their
why we
best
have a
interest.
public hearing.
That's right.
That's why it's a public hearing.
We want to have a public hearing.
and you did say that Tony said, even if it is in the flood, in our new floodplain map, a solar array is a permissible.
It is. There are numerous things that can be done with that property according to what our current zoning is. And that is not subject to flooding. It is in a floodplain. It's not in the same as down by the river itself. It is a stormwater drainage that comes out of from up above.
Well,
That's a different.
Yeah, I'll contact the DNR and see what they have to say. If they say, no, we can't do that, then it's, but the way you read the contract, you just prorate,
so you will get that done this week?
yeah, I'll do it.
So next week's agenda, maybe just
Give
have
an
time
update.
for further discussion, so you can talk about if you wanna
Yeah,
auction it to bidders or sell it privately, and what the DNR says and that kind of thing.
Can I add into the discussion though, that right now it's planted a native species that we can collect seed, let me finish, that we can collect seed on. And that discussion should include the department head of the secondary roads, because they have an investment in that land through our roadside program. So I think everybody's not at the table on this discussion or this decision.
We're still going to discuss it next week.
All right, moving on. Sorry, Nick, we're running a little behind. Oh, anyone else have anything else for Andy? All right,
no,
thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. What do you have for road matters, Nick?
Yeah.
Just the transmission.
Yeah, so speaking of transmission, 111, sent that email to you guys last week and yeah, unfortunately is the transmission, so that's down in Dubuque right now. The estimate is for $28,000.
is that a remand or just fixed or?
I guess I don't have the answer to that, but, I know that dollar amount will fluctuate potentially until they get into it. And you don't know, even if it is us getting a remand, you're still paying based on our transmission.
Yeah.
So, I'll find that out for you and let you know for sure if we're getting a remand or if we're getting ours back into it. But yeah, right now the estimate is 28,000 for it. So
Does that mean we're gonna keep that money?
We're gonna keep that for a while longer.
Actually, I don't believe so, because the engine, actually, 111, the reason why we wanted to speed that one up was because of poor samples of the engine. Right now, the engine is actually still functioning, so it may actually be a conversation to park that this winter. Well, I take it, that's the one that's gonna be, that we're wanting to trade in this December, so we may wanna park it now until we get the machine from Ziegler. What's coming in?
Will Ziegler up their trade
We'll have to-
value since you're putting a $28,000 transmission?
We'll have to have that conversation. I know I've had that conversation with Jared in Howard County in the past where, yeah, I mean, the machine is now worth more because it's got a brand new transmission.
50% of their money back or something, or?
Yeah, we'll work that out with Ziegler and see where we're at with that, but yeah, we'll have to have a different figure for
They
that.
have to fix it. Then you can cut the other figure in half, right?
Yeah,
Well,
and then the trading value would be significantly less. We already took it over there to have it be fixed, I guess, but, yeah, I think that Ziegler would be more apt to want it to be fixed.
Functional,
Yeah, when we traded it to them. Yeah.
otherwise you're just looking at scrap almost.
Mhm.
I think it would be, yeah, I wouldn't put figures in nobody's mouth, but it wouldn't be much.
Plus, we get governmental discounts on materials, so it's possible that we can get that training fixed, cheaper than what Ziegler could. Don't know whether or not Ziegler would want to be doing, since that's a Deere, 111 is a Deere, whether or not they would want to, get involved in that transmission or not, but, so I don't know, I'll also have a conversation with Jared on that as far as that trade, so. Yeah. I guess as far as updates, Bridge 373, which is the box culvert on North Bear Road. We were able to get to that significantly on the backfill. Possibly this week, we should have that location opened up with all the backfilling, because we're doing all that remaining work. So the guys have informed me that we should be able to get that completely backfilled this week. The negative side of hammering that one out is we haven't got to W14, but we'll move to that directly after getting this box culvert backfilled, so. I was not aware, like I said, we have the LP diesel and ice control rock bids in, but I did not get them on the agenda, but they'll be on next week agenda for approving that type of stuff. So, yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately, that was my fault that I did not get that on the agenda, but we'll get that on next week and approve that stuff. The other stuff that Jeff indicated is our crews were out there at Horn Hollow getting the fencing and barricades put up. So that should be done early this week. They're out there right now and were last week. Just the blades were out all last week, getting a lot of work done with the moisture that we had in the roads. But other than that, I don't have anything else specific. Unless you guys do.
I would just want to extend a thank you to the road crews who showed up on Saturday and Sunday when the conditions were good for blading. Thank them.
Yeah, we'll do.
It sees that there's some things written here, and one of the board members had asked me last week about looking at the 5-year plan. So I'm assuming sometime when you have some more time to start looking at that, you'll talk about, because we've already missed some submittal times for bids. So I'm gonna start looking about how that affects the 5-year plan.
So I typically, in Howard County, what I do with my 5-year program is I'm starting that in about December, around the same time that I'm really working on my budget. Having an understanding of how much local money I have for local projects. And then we just discuss it in multiple board meetings throughout January and February. But yeah, I think in this scenario, I'll jump on that a little bit quicker here. Kind of along that lines, I seen you had shared engineer as an item. I have talked to my board about it, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't know that they're willing to entertain this. There's concerns, they don't want the stuff that's going on in Winneshiek County spilling into Howard County. That being said, I think it's probably worth the conversation. They all agreed that it would be worth that conversation. And specifically because of these projects is if you do go the route of hiring a consulting firm, if you time this all out, by the time you get a consulting firm on board, by the time you give them, I don't know what, 30 days to try to locate someone, get some interviews in place, get an offer made. I don't think you even have time yet to get W-14 in a letting in which I would personally put it in. My personal opinion on a project of this size, I would be targeting December or January for a letting date. But remember, when we sign final plans and turn in, it's 3 months ahead of that. So right now, you're looking at potentially a January letting with the current check plans can be submitted this month, and they can still be submitted under myself. But we cannot sign any plans or do anything with them until you have a permanent solution in place. If you're gonna go out for a consultant, it's probably best case scenario that you have a consultant, or excuse me, an engineer in place from that consultant until January. And then you gotta sign plans at that point. You're probably, you're looking into April then. But a project of this size, I wouldn't wanna let it after March. That doesn't mean you can't. That's just my opinion on that. A contractor is gonna be pretty filled up, at that point. It'd be different if it was a 5-mile job. A 5-mile job could get filled in at the end of the year, but when you're talking something this large, you want to get it before the contractors have too much work. I have not analyzed the bridges, that are highlighted up there as well, as far as how quickly or when you want to let them. What I do in Howard County, again, this is my personal opinion on letting dates, but like a bridge over the Upper Iowa, if it's on a paved road, I've got one actually this summer, or excuse me, next summer, that's in the December letting. I really wouldn't want to get much past the January letting for a big bridge project on a paved road, because it's going to take 5 to 6 months for them to construct it. You can't let that in April and expect that to get done that summer. If it's an 80-foot slab on a gravel road, that can get done in 2 to 3 months. A contractor could fill that one in at the end of the summer and get that done. I believe you have some smaller structures or box culverts, and I think one might be a bigger one. So that bigger one might already potentially have to be pushed back just because of the timing of it. Let it that late. Those are my personal opinions on lettings. A contractor might tell you differently, but that's my personal opinion. Again, I can't guarantee that we could work out an agreement with Howard County, but I think it's worth having the conversation with them. Because if you don't, and you wait till after the consultant comes in, it might be too late again for the shared agreement to get a project let in an appropriate time. Just my 2 cents on that, I guess.
And on another option, like we did with one of our projects that's gonna go next year, summer, I think, is that when we had a late letting, we just gave them a larger construction window, so they basically had 2 summers over which they could do it. So if you're not submitting for a letting till April or May, you shouldn't expect it to get done next summer, but you can submit it then with the chance to get it in the following summer if they.
Yeah, you just extend the completion date.
Correct. The one negative side of that is the contractor may have to increase their costs because they don't know what the cost of asphalt is gonna be the following year. They don't know what the cost of concrete is gonna be for a bridge the following year, so they're gonna have to build some of that in.
It'll cost more.
It doesn't mean that it still couldn't get done at an appropriate price, but those are all things you have to think about.
So obviously longer this gets pushed out, the more expensive it's gonna be. Going down.
And this is related but different in that the W-14 project is getting, the portion of it is getting funded through farm to market.
Mhm.
how does that affect, as the farm to market goes through our 5-county region, does that mean if we have to push ours back a year, can one of the others get theirs bumped up so that the region itself doesn't get behind a year, even if we're behind a year?
So, actually, it's not, the farm market is just controlled through the DOT, it's the STP, it's the federal money that we have for that project. I typically know that's not gonna be an issue. People bump projects back a year or two all the time with that money. It's more of an issue if you're trying to let it sooner than what you anticipated there.
And we don't need to worry about our farm to market getting too much of a balance, because we're already like way in the red.
Yeah, and the other thing I have not analyzed is where you're at on your farm to market account, where you're at on your bridge account.
We actually we put $1 million from our ARPA money into the farm to market account so that it had a big enough balance so that we could do the project next summer. So I don't think there's any issue of it getting too far positive that we're gonna be frowning on it. Not expect.
To that point, with both the farm to market account and the bridge account, each one of them has a different amount of years to it, but if you're in the black too many years, you actually lose. The DOT determines that, hey, you're not wanting to spend this money, we're gonna divvy it out to the rest of the county. So that does happen from time to time, mostly in the bridge aspect of it. And I've never been in that position in Howard County, but I've been the benefactor of other people not getting it done so that I get extra money. So that is something that I do want to look into though, and I should probably get that.
You can report that when you're working on this stuff, but I don't think it's an issue because I think we were far enough in the red that it's not good. I think our 1-year allotment is like 1.7 million in farm to market, and we put an extra $1 million in there just so that we could not go past the 3-year negative. So we aren't even close to being in the black yet, even if we push this back a year.
So your opinion is we should look into at least asking the questions with your board?
I think you should, because if you don't, and if you wait till after you allow the consultant to go out, and we're talking in December or January, then it may be too late even to get the projects done. If I were to sign up on the shared with Howard County. I honestly think with W14, you're already
evaluate, how is this working out for us?
So that would be more, you wouldn't be looking for a county engineer then. You'd be looking for someone, assistant engineer that could become a county engineer
Yes.
later. So it's a different pool of applicants.
Yes,
Than trying to encourage
yes.
getting a
It
county.
would save us the cost of consulting firm. It could possibly be a cost savings in the shared engineer position. These are all things to be discussed, but it gives us pause without missing the opportunity to get jobs done for our county at the current rates. We could move ahead with those 3 bridges and the W14 from Fort Atkinson to Ridgeway if we were able to secure a shared engineer position. If there's a neighborhood engineer and board who's willing to work with Winneshiek County right now.
I have always, for a long time now, thought we're getting too late in the process to start interviewing and get somebody on board to do these projects, probably and get a decent bid time with it. So I guess I would say we should go ahead and really look at a shared engineer's position. It's only for a year potentially, but maybe 2, but that would give us time to.
Just a second, are we still muted out there?
I saw someone doing, or was that you running the computer or?
I was just looking at the chat messages, but I didn't do anything on the mic.
You're
Oh,
fine again.
No, but it
We-
seems
we can
like
hear
at
you.
some point you guys got muted.
We can hear you now that we lost you for about 10 minutes.
Anyway, I guess I'm on the agreement that we should start looking at a shared position. Obviously, I think Nick has done a great job, but that isn't necessary. They may not even want to do a position with us, but we need to look into it. Otherwise,
Surrounding counties.
with the surrounding counties, we're gonna get in a bad situation.
It buys us time. It
And-
may be a cheaper rate than going with a consulting firm, going through that process, missing out on letting to get bids in on these projects. We're looking at a possible cost savings rather than money out the door. And it puts us in a safer position right now financially for the taxpayers' purpose to get started on these projects earlier rather than later. If we can look at a shared agreement with surrounding
Well,
counties.
we'd been almost 2 months ahead if we'd have just interviewed the applicants we had right off the bat. And then we'd have been, know which direction to go. Now, by delaying that, looking for these research firms, here we are, 2 months later, no farther ahead.
Well, like we
Wasn't
talked
my
about
idea for the research.
before, there was no management experience in the applications we had. 0 management experience. And that's not really doing the right thing by the county to bring somebody in and set them up for failure if they have no management. This is 40 people. It's not a small job.
Well aware of that.
We all know that, Shirley.
Would you agree that they didn't have management experience?
I did not see on their resumes management experience. In fact, I made comment on that. But I will disagree with Shirley. If a search firm is used, they have a lot of benefit. They're in the business and have been for the last 100 years for a reason. They reach into a different pool than we'll ever reach into as an individual county. And so it doesn't matter to me, and I am not offended by paying a fee to a search firm. And I know the benefit of them because I've been one. And we've done that in my own career, and I never had to apologize to anyone for not giving them qualified candidates. So Mark's point is valid. We are pressing the issue over W14. And since I live right on W14, I understand the reason for the concern. Drive between Spillville and Fort, see what it looks like. Drive between Spillville and Ridgeway in the wintertime before shoulders. So we've made a lot of progress, but we are in a pinch, there's no doubt about it. But we can't do anything with these candidates until we end our period. Search firm, see if we get some other firms. The firm that has contacted us came highly recommended from an international search firm. So I don't have to question the ability of who they are and what they do and whether or not they're not a. I'm sorry. They're not the ones that are in question here. We've got to have candidates. Dan has a legitimate point. You know, do we want to go ahead and talk to those two individuals? If we do, it might, then I don't know that they may possibly have the ability to fulfill an assistant engineer role. Whether or not they have the ability, even they have a ticket to be able to stamp something, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily the individuals that would best fit to do the job that we're looking for.
Well, and that's what I'm looking, if we did have an interview with the applicants, get a feel for who they are, what skills they do have. And if they don't fit for a lead engineer in the county, you can always respond back to them that we felt that, you know, you were qualified for that position at this point in time. We may possibly have an assistant engineer spot coming up. We will keep you in mind and inform you. And then we have an idea where they're coming from. You know, and they may not have reapplied for that position, but
If we moved on that, Ben, how long do you think it would take to get somebody in place to come for a discussion of those two candidates?
Why would you bet you could later this week or first part of next week, get those people, get interviews in? I would, the initial proposal sent by that search firm, I emailed them back because I had some concerns with it, because it had clauses in there if you hired an engineer that you had to pay the search firm anyway. Or if you hired any of the candidates that they recommended for a different position, you had to pay the search firm. So I think that if there's any chance you would want either of these people for a position, you should, any position, you should interview them and get moving on that before you sign any agreement with a search firm. Now, I did ask if they would consider taking that clause off, especially the one about if we hired, say, an assistant engineer or something later, but with somebody that submitted their name to the engineer position, that we'd have to pay the search firm. I asked them if they'd consider taking that clause off, because it very well could happen that the same people apply to both. And so I was a little concerned about that.
We're still taking bids from search firms for another week yet. So,
Yeah. Well, until the end of this week, you'll hear about it next week, but
So I guess I would suggest we bring the people in there.
Bring it to it.
But also I think at the same time, we need to start seeing if there is a shared county we could work with. Because if you're already saying, well, maybe they'll be good for another job, that it still doesn't solve our engineer.
Go ahead with the interviews and then check on the
But I think we need to
share do them too.
with the anticipation that we hire a search firm to have somebody in place for us a year from, you know, at least 1 or 2 years from now, but we do use a search firm.
I would say go ahead and message.
So it's kind of a hybrid of all three.
Interview and have that answer, and then we can check with the county ground for a share. You do them two possibilities first, and
we have a meeting on the 11th.
we have to move forward.
Yeah.
I think we're all under agreement on that one.
Yep. So I would say set up the interview with the two, and
Hopefully within 2 weeks, we'd have an idea then of is the possibility for a shared or is one of the other two.
one or the other.
You
qualified.
want me to, I'll contact those two, that's pretty straightforward, so you can get something set up later this week for interviews.
Wait, so Joel Vance is still involved in the interviewing committee?
Yeah, I'll contact them to make sure we can get interviews set up, then I'll let all of you know, including Joel. I mean, don't you want, you're more flexible probably than they are, right?
Yeah.
Since you're in a hurry, we'll see when they can come, if I can get them two times on a similar morning or afternoon, then I'll contact you and Joel. And I don't remember, did we have Nick in that or not?
No.
No.
No, okay. So
I
I'll
tried to
contact,
extend, but there was a conflict.
the 5 of you and Joel to say, here's when I have these set up, and we'll go from there. Is there any times, I guess, that you guys know that would be bad? We can't do it tomorrow because they have to be published at the meeting, so there's no time at this point. It has to be 24
And they'd be
hours.
considered an open meeting?
It's an open meeting. Unless the person being interviewed requires it to be, or asks for it to be closed.
I don't see that we have any real conflicts this week.
I don't have, I don't believe it.
Okay, so
Friday morning is my only conflict, but I can cancel that.
Okay.
It's an ISAC thing, so I can cancel that if need be.
Okay, then I'll go with seeing what we can get organized yet this week with those two. You want me to send a note to the 5 surrounding closest counties auditors and ask them to put it on their board agendas next week if they would consider being a shared engineer? Because they aren't gonna be able to get an answer till they have a meeting, and that's gonna take next week's meeting probably.
Yeah. And then the 11th, the morning of the 11th is also out for all of us. That's a 6 county meeting. And Thursday afternoon is out for a couple of us for a safety site visit.
That's the following meeting.
Right, no, I meant next Wednesday morning. If these guys can't meet till next Wednesday, the 11th morning and the afternoon of the 12th would be problematic.
But then after you hold the interviews and discuss those candidates, you have a better idea if you want to proceed with one research firm, or if there's more than one, or if you want to consider offering one of these people a different position or that kind of thing. You can talk more about those kinds of things after you have the interview.
Yep, sure. Yep.
That probably covers all 3 of those bullet points.
Yep.
But you have more things to talk about with this, that's up to you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
The motion and the second for adjournment. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's not adjourned. Is it adjourned?
Sorry about that to the people online. We did not know it was muted for those 10 minutes. Thanks for trying to let us know.
Okay, do you guys mind giving a summary?